appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's a really big deal. And I think a lot of people struggle with, how do I draw a boundary? How do I not shame my culture? And my question is, which culture are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the culture of freedom, the culture of love? Like that has no nationality to it. And if that's the case, then you're stripping away all of the cultural expectations and you're peeling the layers back and you're saying, where's the core? Where's the center? What's my motive? And I'm going to just target that and move, and move beautifully. And I think that you're doing a wonderful job doing that. So
thank you. I love that. The culture of freedom, the culture of love. I love that. And I do appreciate definitely the connection. Again, we're from different countries, right? But that connection is universal. Like that conqueror.
Yes.
Yeah. That is universal. And that's what I hope to inspire, especially how you're saying, like, I don't want to shame anyone. Like, our culture, our heritage has been around longer than we have.
Oh, yeah. And longer than America.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
So if we can just evolve and through that love, through understanding, through including each other, that's the goal. And just going back to our parents and our parents' struggles, they had it hard.
Yes.
And a lot of it could be also...
I mean, you think communism.
Right.
Because my parents came from communism as well, religious asylum.
Yes.
So
that political oppression, that threat to your safety, to that core, the core thing that makes us feel we have security, when that's shattered, it's going to affect us in ways, and it's going to make us less nurturing towards the next generation.
It's very much stoicism.
Yes.
I see like across the board, Eastern Europe and the Slavic countries as well. And it's like, it makes me wonder, exactly how much, you try not to justify what the parents did, because you're like, okay, but you came to a free country and you saw all of this. Why didn't you assimilate some of that, into the culture? But they became so conservative. Like, it was like, we need to preserve. They can't become Americanized.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And in our house, like with our children, the way I conduct and teach things is very much a culture of love, like a culture of, and I'm like, take all the good things from the Romanian side of our lineage, and then take all the great things from the American side and chew the meat and spit out the bones, right? But I also wonder, like, how much, like, for example, and I'm not trying to justify, because our parents did a lot of different things. Like, my uncles, my aunts, like, I have stories and stories, gobs of them. But how much of it was like, the communist, the whatever party was coming, and if you didn't have, like, if your children trained in such a way to, at the flip of a coin or like the flip of a switch, to just shut up and get under the bed or whatever the situation was to save their lives, and how much of that became just their conditioning, and then they just never stepped back to be like, I'm going to mutilate my relationship with my children unless I figure out we're safe. We're safe, and this is a different life altogether. I need to scale it back, and like, these are survival and coping mechanisms I learned during communism, but we're in a free country now. Let's explore that, and I feel like that is a big part of it. And I wonder, like, I've noticed in my parents specifically, mom kind of arrived to that a little bit faster than our dad, in a way of like, you're going to raise your children, but you're not guaranteed at what kind of decisions they're going to be making or how they're going to do their life. Like, all you can do is just love them and kind of like stay out of their way while they navigate. And it took, like I said, my mom was kind of there probably closer to 15 years ago. Dad has kind of arrived for about past maybe 6 or 7 years, maybe 5 years even. Has that happened? Have you noticed that kind of a shift with your parents now that you guys are all adults and they're like, oh, I miss my kids, like I really want a close connection?
I think so. Yes, and maybe more. I think more what I want to say is I think my dad specifically has kind of rediscovered his freedom,
his identity,
and his identity. So for a while, for most of my life, he was always in this survival mentality. Like,
Yes.
he had to put in the overtime. Even when we were out of the house, he was still putting in the overtime. Like, he was going to run out of money.
My dad does that.
Yes.
Still, yeah.
Yes. Like, and only recently has he started to actually take vacations and take trips. It's like he's rediscovered this new thing where
Called happiness.
Yes. Yes.
Which your husband knew from the very beginning, right?
Yes. Yeah. You don't have to work yourself to the grave. You can actually pause and appreciate your labor and say, this is why I came to America, is to enjoy these freedoms. And I think that's what I've seen the most, the biggest shift in my dad. And yes, he'll definitely reach out, and he'll definitely vocalize how proud he is of us.
Aww.
But
That's beautiful.
What makes me almost the most happy is seeing that he's actually taking the time to invest in his own happiness.
Yes.
And he started telling me stories about his childhood and his adulthood that he's never said before. So I think that's part of his healing as well.
It's an evolution to your guys' relationship. That's really amazing. That he's like feeling open and safe enough to just explore that with you. I think maybe I'm almost positive you gave him the courage to do that, and it's incredible to see like our parents now turning around and looking at us and being like, oh, she's there. Like, she's there. Let's be adults together. And it's like, I think that'll probably be like my favorite part too, looking ahead with my kids. Because like I told you earlier, some days I feel like karate chopping them in the face. I love my kids, but still. But I do feel like, I think they got stuck in this, like, because my dad is like that too. He had a job, like, always hustling, always working, always a new startup, plus a weekend option night shift job at like the local bus factory or something to make more money. And then I think and he kept on saying for like 10 years, he kept saying, I'm going to retire. This is the last winter. This is the last spring. This is the last. And I'm like, Dad, you keep saying that. You got like 5, smaller properties or whatever, but paid off outright. Like, you've got lines of credit. You've got a house in Romania, which was his dream, in the village he grew up in. And I was like, when is it ever going to be enough? And I think they get stuck in that, like, once again, it's a cultural conditioning, because I remember hearing stories back in communist times. If you were walking down the street and it was working hours, you got checked. Like, this is very real. This is why we have such a great work ethic. It's not a balance, though. We have a great work ethic, but it's part of our trauma. Like, it was survival mode, because the cops would stop you, or the military, or the party, whoever it was, and would say, let me see your papers. Do you have permissions? Kind of like a hall pass, but you're on the streets, like in daylight. Or someone with like long hair, like a male with long hair, they would stop and they would take them to jail. They would take you to the station and they'd question you and they'd figure it out, and they'd make your life hell. So I feel like they came to America. They're on top of the fact that there's so much opportunity. You can't go wrong by being busy all the time and kind of earning your keep, and then you just see it compounding and you're like, oh shit, this is what I'm supposed to do here, and then you just get lost in it. And my dad has told me so many times, he's like, I don't know why, but when I'm in America, time flies so much faster than when I'm in Romania. Have you ever experienced that going abroad, feeling like...
I haven't gone back to my homeland, but just when you're on vacation.
Even, when it's like 7 days.
Yes. And
you're like,
absolutely.
There's so much time. But then whenever you're here, it's like, what? It was just Sunday. Like, why is it now, the next Sunday? What the hell's going on? I feel like this culture in this country is very, very, very fast paced, and that's why we have like such a predominantly like anxious culture. And but I interrupted you were going to talk about, like, you said your dad arrived to this new happiness and everything. Have you also seen, like, did your mom evolve in her way, and is she working towards like seeing you guys as adults and stuff?
So that's an interesting question, and it's I probably have a very unpopular or an untraditional answer. So currently my mom and I, we don't talk at all. So we've never repaired that bridge of what happened 5 or 6 years ago when I removed my youngest sister.
Never had the opportunity.
We had no. And going back even earlier in my life. So when I was 20, that was the first time I really stood up to my mom, and I kind of gave her an ultimatum, and I said, hey, you definitely have symptoms of mental health. You know, I'm in nursing school. I don't know all the things, but, and I would give her an example. I was like, this isn't a normal human behavior. I was like, I really think you should get help. And the other thing I said, I was like, I really need to lighten my load of, you know, taking care of my sisters, like doing all these chores, because I was failing.
Parentification.
Yes, I was failing a class, a pharmacology class in nursing school. And I was
Which are the hardest.
Yes. I couldn't study because I was, you know, washing floors till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I had to wake up a couple hours later. So my ultimatum was lighten my load, chores, go get mental health help, or I'm going to leave. Like, and I was 20, like American say.
And that probably broke your heart too, because you knew that you're the rock for your siblings, right? I get that. I feel that.
Yes,
We're
and
very
I
similar in that
definitely had some survivor's guilt. So how that afternoon transpired after my ultimatum, my mom actually thought about what I had said, and then she got very angry, and I got kicked out. So by the end of the day, I was standing at the end of my driveway with a book bag with my bags. I wasn't allowed to pack a bag for clothes, and I just stood there with nowhere to go.
Oh, wow.
And
must have been so scary.
And the quote that my mom said was, "Дорога тебе закрыта." The road home for you will be forever closed. And it was true.
Oh, wow.
So we made some progress off and on throughout the years. But it was never, I think kind of that final collapse came around when I was getting married. Again, I was trying really hard to repair that relationship. And my mom boycotted the wedding. And she didn't let my siblings go. She didn't let my dad go. So it's been multiple times that I've set boundaries, try to negotiate.
And there's backlash.
And again, until we as individuals start our own personal journey of healing, like we can't repair relationships with others, and especially if others aren't willing to repair their
That's
trauma.
the most important takeaway. I feel like, you know, a lot of people will try to, it's almost like begging and pleading with your parents, and then the power dynamic has shifted. So at that point, it's like any unhealthy type of parent, which, you know, all of us have some sort of dysfunction that we came from, right? Like it doesn't matter which culture, which nation, which anything you come from, we've all experienced dysfunction in some way. But I think it's crazy to see that, like, we feel this utter responsibility to fix that as adult kids, and then for them to take that feeling of power and kind of hold it over you and be like, yeah, I see you trying to make it, you know, happen, and just going to sit right here because I know it hurts you. And that's, I think, one of the most painful things. And, you know, I don't wish that upon anyone, because the saying is true, hurt people. And she's obviously been very hurt in her life to be this, you know, and probably felt very misunderstood and all of the different things that we all go through. The difference is, what's the difference is we sit with it,
right? We
go get help, we explore it, we leave no stone unturned, and then we evolve. And it's that growth mindset. And it's really sad to see our parents kind of stuck in that frozen state, and you're like, you know, your love doesn't change for them. There's a lot more pain associated with it, because you can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves.
Absolutely.
The saying is true.
And the hardest thing for me as an adult is to hear the words, but she's your mom, or insert any other, like, but this is your relative. I think boundaries are important. If I were to say stories of my interactions with my mom and say, you know, insert it with like a friend or a neighbor, somebody not related to me, people would say, like, you need to end that relationship, it's unhealthy,
absolutely,
don't do it. But somehow our DNA connection justifies, like, not having boundaries.
Which it doesn't. And I think our culture is slowly but surely, like pop culture even is coming, it's arriving to that scene where it's like, this relationship was dead on arrival. You know, like, what can we do to mitigate all the loss? That's, you know, and I think there are so many beautiful people out there that are ready and willing to be the parental guidance and, like, mentors. I don't know if you have, like, some older mentors in your life that are kind of like your adoptive parents, and what your relationship is with even with your husband's family and everything, and I hope that it's one of healing. But I know that's a really hard one for me too, is to like accept that they're just so much in control still of like our dynamic with them as parents. And I guess I'm curious about, have you ever, and I'm not trying to get you emotional so we can like skip it, but have you ever sat down and like written a letter to your younger self and kind of detached from this version of you, but like gone back and talked to that younger version of you? And if you haven't, you know, maybe a little, what do you think you would say? Like if young Margarita is like, or 14-year-old or 13-year-old or, you know, 15-year-old Margarita were standing here, like what would you tell her?
Wow, that's a heavy question.
Yeah.
I've never written a letter to myself. However, the memoir that I'm writing is surprisingly hard to write.
Yes,
there are times
very triggering.
that I have to skip a part and I have to come back to it later because the feelings are so real.
Yes.
Like sometimes the smells come back, like that fear comes back. Your heart rate starts to you know, beat faster. Your palms get sweaty, and you're
it's a trauma response.
It is a trauma response.
It's a central nervous system dysfunction.
Yes.
It's CPTSD. People don't get that. You can't control it.
Yes.
We're living testimonies. And
so I think if I were to write myself a letter, it would be similar to me writing my memoir with that strong physical response. But I think what I would tell that 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, and those were the years that for any teenage girl, you're going through
so hard. And with more dysfunction, it's just compounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would just tell her that she's loved. The emotional.
I love it. No, it's good. It's like, it's so beautiful.
I think we try. I think we try so hard to like prove our worth.
Yes.
And it goes back to like us as adults with a work ethic, with getting extra credentials, with getting extra degrees, because somehow it tucks. Somehow we're like proving that we're worthy. Yeah. But we have to be just loved for who we are, like outside of our accomplishments.
Absolutely.
And I think as a kid, when you're growing up with such confusion, where you think you have to earn, you know, food or earn
basic human rights,
you start
acknowledgement, attention, hugs.
You realize you don't know what love is.
Ooh.
And again, going back to my relationship with my husband, he truly, like, I fell in love with him because of the way he loved me. And I've told him, I was like, this was unfair to you, buddy, because I didn't really love you for you to like use into our marriage. But I loved the way you loved me.
But it's so beautiful that he saw you. Yes. And he was like, this woman, I'm going to love this woman. And every fiber. And that's where the drapes, the curtains come off, the fog comes away. And then you really start getting to know, like, oh shit, I'm a good person. I'm a great person.
Yeah, I deserve to be loved.
Absolutely.
And I know.
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest take home is, like, just to let people know that they're loved. And that emotional reaction, I wasn't expecting it, but when you make it personal like that, it's so easy to advocate for other people. It's so easy to tell somebody else that you matter, you're loved. But when you look at yourself and your most vulnerable moment and you say, I matter, and I should be loved,
and I'm safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's healing. That's and
it's very cathartic.
It is.
Like I heard from someone, you know, recently. And the guy was like, I can't remember who the speaker was, but they said, I'm only trying to impress 2 people on the planet. Have you heard it?
No.
That's my 8-year-old self and my 80-year-old self. So if we can detach all of the cultural conditioning, and like think of like, I'm gonna cry. Like think of like 8-year-old you and like 8-year-old you looking at you right now.
Yeah.
in the journey and like who you are, and like not only your external beauty but your internal beauty. Like, I know 8-year-old you would have looked at you in the pageant and been like, holy shit, I made it. Like, right? Look, I made it, you know? Yeah. And I think we just need to give ourselves more and more of that more frequently. I feel like that's just something that we're going to have to work on as like survivors of whatever trauma we've survived. We just need to do it more until the good crowds out the bad. I think that's like the only way to get through it, is to like go through it, but keep on, like, keep tabs, just like our brain and our amygdala has kept tabs on like all the negative things and the traumas and whatever. Like, we hold some really strong power and strength in rewiring our brains to be very positive mindset, growth mindset, like, and to be able to like consciously imagine and decide, like, look at me, like, I've done this, I've achieved it, I'm so proud of me. And if we have struggles with it, you know, maybe doing like an exercise where you're sitting in bed and this is 8-year-old you, and like re-rolling through the tape and being like, I fucking made it. Yeah. I made it. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud. And like all these little 8-year-old girls, I'm thinking like, or 18 or 28, you know, you're still so young and you're still just trying to figure everything out. And I think that's like just an important thing for us to really like give the space to ourselves to do. And I know you're a lot like we're very similar in our storytelling, and it's like, we're bad bitches, like, don't fuck with us. But on the same token, what people I feel like don't understand is they look at you, they see the beauty, the strength, the diligence, the power, you know, the boss babe, the whatever, and then but they don't see like the human. We're just human. We just make different decisions, and we do the work, and it's hard, and it's every day. Some days it's messy, some days we step back, some days we feel like we're failing, some days like I have anxiety and I'm just like, I just need to lay down and ground myself. How do I ground myself? How do I do it? Because you just feel that fear, that impending like fear of failure, and that, you know, performance anxiety, and you know, you're like, oh, everybody's watching, all my naysayers are watching, like, how do I continue this journey but not put myself in a precarious position where they're just going to point their finger? And I'm wondering like how much of that still holds true to also to your journey. Like, you've come a long way, you've established very good boundaries, you have a great loving relationship with your husband, you have an amazing career, you're going, you're getting after it, you're writing the memoir, like, you're doing all the things. But I think it would be important to share like, how much of maybe of those fears do you still actually have and struggle with and like battle, you know, the reality.
Absolutely. And it's a great segue to kind of mention that in the military, especially as an officer, it's our duty to put up this professional front and to hide our human side.
It's a facade.
It's a facade.
It's a military facade. We have many facades.
Yes.
And it's not wrong.
Yes. Right? And I've had friends ask me like, I know you as this, like, how do you put on your military game face? And what I've learned,
like, you crazy, we're drinking tequila, we crazy, or whatever, right?
And what I've learned, so I've been in the military for 14 years, 10 really good years. 4 years I sort of took a step back, took a break, but for 14 years. And what I've learned is it's okay to show your human side. When you're in leadership positions, especially as an officer, and be very tactful with how you show your human side.
Right.
But if you're just regulations and expectations, people aren't going to connect with you, and people aren't going to trust you. Yeah.
Because you're so up here, and how do I get there? Like, I don't have the discipline, I don't have the experience, right?
So the way I perceive kind of leadership roles is more of a mentor. There's a lot of mentoring going on. And the reason I'm also competing to be Miss Veteran America is because I love their motto of seeing the woman beyond the uniform.
Yes.
And that's kind of the message that I want to bring with me into the military. I will always have a strong work ethic. We've talked about that. I will always be professional, but
your lashes are always gonna be beautiful.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yes. And I will.
And you'll wear your smile.
That's right. and I will empathize with soldiers, and they will see it. So when I was deployed as a sexual assault response coordinator, that was my primary job.
That's incredible. What does that mean exactly? Is it within military or within like civilians, like where we're stationed, or how does that work?
So yes, so the military, primarily it would be military service members who were my clients, but who
were sexually assaulted.
Correct, sexually assaulted or sexually harassed.
Does it happen that often? Because
Yes.
I mean, they created a job for you.
Yes.
Wow.
But it's not just a military problem. So,
Right, of course.
It's in the civilian side, but
Yeah.
military's held to a higher standard.
Absolutely.
So anytime anything bad happens, the spotlight is there, and where is the discipline?
Right.
So when I was the sexual assault response coordinator for the installation, and I would have service members come to me, and they're vulnerable. They've already, thought about long and hard, like, do I trust this person?
Yes. It's scary coming out.
It's scary, and
how many people are going to come out
Exactly.
as well, and like
yes,
yeah.
One thing I learned is that service members are human, and they want to see your human side. If we're sitting across the table and and a service member is telling me a traumatic story, they don't want me pulling out the regulations and being like, oh, yep, this matches this regulation. Oh, and your story just violated. Yep, we got, we can move forward.
Yeah.
They don't want that. They expect you to know it.
They want to be seen.
Yes, they want to be seen.
For the human.
Yes.
Right?
So
no better person for the job, mind you.
I was passionate about my job, and I will continue to be that voice of advocacy in the military for topics of sexual harassment, sexual assault, for as long as my career and beyond. Even when there's certain positions that I'll be taking command of my unit this
Hey,
fall.
girl! Yes!
There's certain positions that there's a slight conflict of interest because, a commander and then a sexual response coordinator. So I can still advocate, just in a different way.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
And you control who you get to put in that position and make sure that they are passionate about it, and that you're kind of recreating yourself, but now more functionality.
Yes.
It's hard to leave something you're passionate about.
Yes.
And it's scary, but
Yes.
I'll be interested to see how that turns out for you.
Yeah. So kind of to go back to your original question, what I've learned is to show my human side. The default will always be to be professional, to put my game face on, but even in the military, I need to show that I'm human, to be trusted.
Yeah, absolutely. What makes us trustworthy is to feel that connection with someone, like, okay, I'm being seen, I'm being heard, like I'm not being judged. I think that's really a big thing. And like I said, no better person for the job, because we've felt that in our culture. Like it's all, like you said, they would turn back, look at you as you walked into church, and look you up and down. What kind of shoes are you wearing? What's your skirt? Is it too short? Is it too sexy? Do you have a top on? For me, it was the head coverings. Do you have makeup on? Oh my goodness, that's such a sin.
Right.
For
Nail
other
polish.
people,
Yeah.
For other people, it's like, what?
Yes.
No, that's how it was. I got my ears pierced at 32 years old with my 12-year-old daughter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I love earrings now. I'll wear the biggest ones I can. I got some hoops as big as my attitude, but but like growing up in that, like you always wondered, like, why I don't understand. And the explanation, like, that I remember religiously was well, God made you a certain way, why would you change that? But then you would see all of this like duplicity, because then other people are like, older people are like coloring their hair because they don't want to have gray hair, but you're young, you're a youth, so you don't need all of this stuff. And then it's just this contradictory thing, and I think it just
or how much alcohol does kvass actually have? If we're drinking no alcohol, how much alcohol does kvass actually have?
What is kvass?
Oh, I'm sorry, I just assumed. You don't know what kvass is?
No, is that your guys' moonshine?
It's
That's palinka for us, or
okay,
tsuika.
okay,
Yeah, from like plums.
Yes, and like
same thing from plums.
They have
what
different.
What's
like
the
fermented
tradition?
bread. I think it's like fermented bread. I think.
Oh wow.
And I could be wrong. And
No, it could very well be that.
But I know there's other.
And they were what? They were drinking it?
Yes. Yeah, at night. And
So
they got
my-
happier by the hour.
Right? And that's when you knew alcohol was in your future, right? Like in good, healthy doses. No, I remember, like, I got drunk for the first time after I left my marriage. A lot of people don't know this about me. I was 31. My siblings took me out. My military brother, my older brother that had completed a tour in the Marines, bought my first shot of Patron.
Wow, that's what I drink.
Yeah. And then they bought a Vegas bomb. So I had that, and I kid you not, we're sitting it was a live music. It was just a little bar with a piano, whatever. And I'm just sitting there, and all my siblings are like, oh my God, this is Diana. Like, this is Diana. This is like the golden child. Doing all the perfect things, right, for so long. And we're out here, we're out in the streets.
Yeah.
And I just start laughing, like we were talking or something. The music's going, and I'm just laughing. And I literally, will never forget this. I lean over, and I'm laughing, and I almost aspirated my spit. And I was like, is this what it feels like to be drunk? Like, like you don't.
Yeah.
And I feel like I wish that they would have shared that aspect of the culture with us too. Like, because I know in Slavic culture, probably I'm assuming, but in like Eastern Europe or Romanian culture, party life is a life.
It's a life.
Orthodox Romanians, which is the majority of the religion, even though they have their things they got to do, but they turn up.
Yes.
Turn up.
Yes.
And that's part of our, every fiber of our being. So why are you, taking us against the grain even, indoctrinating all these religious, expectations and things that just don't feel normal? Like, it doesn't feel like that's what life is supposed to be. It feels so lacked in balance, right? So I know to your Suica Palinka, I think it's I want to say it's 80 proof, or I don't know how alcohol is measured, but that shit burns. Like, my dad used to bring a 1 liter bottle home every time he'd come back from Romania, and he's like, when he had COVID, he was doing inhalations of the fumes. When he has gingivitis or anything like that, or sore throat, it's a remedy, you know. But also when you're having a horrible time in life, it's
a mental remedy.
Absolutely, just takes you away for a little bit and lets you go to sleep, and
And I actually mentioned that in my memoir, where I feel like there's a gap in my full heritage experience, because I was only I only saw that religious side.
Yes.
I know that there's this
conservative
other side.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, I talk to people about this all the time too, like in Romanian, I grew up in Romanian churches here, and the Romanian churches here are so very different than the Romanian churches in Romania. And it's and when people come from Romania and they come to visit the Romanian churches, because it's their culture, right? They're like, oh, it's like walking into a church from the 1980s, from communism.
Wow.
Because they came here, they wanted to preserve so tightly that they never really expanded and let the youth breathe and let it evolve and let it turn in. But then you go to Romania and all the youth are in the church, everybody's there. It's a very free type of experience. They're dressed a certain different way. It's much more free and not quite as traditional as it is here. And I'm wondering if it's the same or similar thing with Russia, Ukraine. I'm sure with Ukraine for sure, because they became free, after the 90s. And so I wonder, how many people do you know that maybe come back and forth and you're like, you don't seem like you're Ukrainian. Why? You're wearing makeup. You look like a bombshell. I've seen people and Romanian people, when I go to Romania, before I started wearing makeup at all, they were like, oh yeah, I can tell you're an American Romanian. You bitches never wear makeup. And I'm like, oh hell no. But it just really connected with me, and I was like, why is this disconnect? Is it the same for the Ukrainian culture? Do you notice that?
I don't think I could accurately answer that. I definitely, because I've never been back personally.
Right, but people that come and visit.
And I've never asked that question. So
but do you observe it? Do you see them dressed to the dime and you're like, we're so much more basic here as Ukrainian Americans?
Yes and no. There's been a couple that I recently that have come. I guess it does depend on where they come from. Is it a village or a city? Correct.
Right.
And is it a war-torn country?
Yeah.
Recently, I don't think there's been anybody that I've seen who's coming over that is glammed up.
Yeah.
But I
definitely. Right. Not recently for sure. But.
Yeah. I definitely have to think about it. I'm so fascinated with that observation. I've never actually made that comparison to like what really happens in Ukraine and why are we as immigrants here in the U.S., Ukrainians or Russians, like why are we so stuck and why are we so different? Like why do we think we're being like our motherland, but we're so
different from them actually.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
I would be curious. Maybe you can follow up with me later when you get to think about it, because I'm like, I know for a fact I had a couple of cousins, they go over, they find maybe a partner, and then they come over, whatever, K1 visa, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I still sometimes watch 90 Day Fiancé. I'm like, hey, let's learn about this culture,
This feels like home.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember specifically a couple of people that had moved over from Romania, and it was maybe 10 years ago. But I mean, dressed to the dime every single time. Never would be caught dead in like warm-ups in the grocery store, which is still the culture over there. And just all of these different things. And you're just like, I'm American. I've been living in the land of milk and honey. Like, we have properties or whatever, whatever the situation is. They're coming with like $200 in their pocket or whatever it is. And then, but they know how to dress and they know how to like present themselves, and they're even their mentalities are like elevated and forward thinking, progressive. And you wonder like how stagnated we are as a culture in America, like these little pockets of just conservatism, we're gonna preserve, and how much more progressive they are with the influence, especially I feel like maybe from the European Union when it formed and everything kind of, the borders opened up and people were able to travel and go and learn cultures and stuff. And it'll be interesting to see. And I'm speaking more to like our cultures, or just any culture that has come here, and like you feel like I don't really fit in here, but I also don't fit in there. Like maybe that's a good thing to explore. It's like, just see, why don't you fit in? Is it because you've adopted all of the childhood cultural conditioning that you and you haven't been questioning it yet? Because maybe it's time to do that. Like we have so much out there that helps us exit what we've grown up in and our childhood brokenness and all these things. Maybe it's time to see, like, rediscover, like, who am I? What's the culture? Like, I feel like we have different, like we talked about, like the culture of love, the culture of acceptance, the culture of just, I think we could stick any adjective or adverb to that verb, because to love is to, to perform an action, and we can just choose, like, what's our flag, like what's our mantra, and kind of see, like, where did we go wrong in, like, as a culture, as a hybrid culture, and maybe explore that and keep the good and get rid of the bad, so that, for me, it's like my kids, I don't want them to think of Romania as like a negative thing, like, oh, all the different negative things, because there are plenty. I want them to know the good things. Like, I want them to know that, we do love to have fun. We're outdoorsy people. We have great work ethic. And I'm sure a lot of this is resonating. We're community-based. Like, we cherish family because we know we value life. We value having things, neatly manicured and like beautiful and spacious, and and them understanding all those things as opposed to just the negative parts of it, And you were asking me when we were getting the tea ready. I mean, you can fire away. I'm ready. Like, I'm always ready.
So one of the things that I'm always curious about with the evolution of you and the evolution of other women who are kind of pioneering to kind of reclaim love and reclaim, loving their family better, is how has it been for your community to, I guess as a whole, to accept your divorce? But then also, I'm really curious, how are the men who go through the divorce in our community with such a stoic cultural background, like how do they deal with divorce and separation, and how does it affect their like perception of manhood? Like, how has your ex-husband dealt with this divorce?